Hello and welcome back to another episode of Colorado Politicking. I'm Pay Poblete, a legislative reporter with Colorado Politics. And this week we're going to kick things off in Mesa County, which in many ways has been the center of political intrigue in Colorado, especially after Secretary of State Jenna Griswold announced a probe of the county's voting equipment. Now, political correspondent Ernest Luning and I have both been following the story, but Ernest really has the latest. So let's kick it over to you then, Ernest. What's going on here?
Well, Pat, this morning, the Secretary of State, Democrat Jenna Griswold, did something that the office has never done before. It decertified an entire county's election equipment. And it's the voting system that Mesa County out there on the Western Slope, Grand Junction, is the county seat. It's what they've been using, but what the Secretary of State is alleging is that the county clerk, Tina Peters, a Republican, allowed someone who wasn't authorized into a software update on the equipment. And that person, it looks like, videotaped the whole thing, put it up online, and in doing so, compromised the security of the equipment. Griswold said today that the equipment cannot be used for an election anymore because there's some chain of custody issues. There's also some pretty salacious accusations there that Peters ordered the video surveillance, which keeps track of all this equipment, make sure that it's safe and no one's tampering with it. She ordered that turned off before this alleged videotaping took place, and kept the cameras off for another month and a half. And I think it's what prosecutors like to call evidence of guilty knowledge, doing something like that. But there's a whole lot of threads to this that we're just starting to unravel.
So, as you said, Ernest, those are some pretty salacious allegations. Have we heard from Tina Peters at all?
America has heard from Tina Peters. We haven't. She hasn't responded to any inquiries, but she spent most of the week in South Dakota at MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell's cyber symposium, which has been going on for the last 3 days up there, and where they're talking about some of the more outlandish theories about how the election might have been stolen, which is something that there appears to be no evidence for, but they're certainly spending a lot of time talking about it. And Tina Peters showed up with some other friends from Mesa County, and she was accusing Jenna Griswold of raiding her office, which in fact the Secretary of State did send some employees there. But you know who else was there was the Republican District Attorney Dan Rubenstein's chief investigator, who's opened a criminal investigation into what might have gone on in Peters' office there.
So that's the view from Griswold, and then conversely from Tina Peters. I'm curious, what do other county clerks make of this?
Well, that's a good question. They seem to be on board with Griswold. Matt Crane, who was one of the most respected county clerks in the state when he was the Republican county clerk in Arapahoe County, he's the executive director now for their trade association. It's the Colorado County Clerks Association. And he was actually there at the press conference with Griswold today. And what he said was that this security breach jeopardized the integrity of and confidence in Colorado's elections. And he said, in response to some of the chatter online about what Peters might have done, he said, what do you say? Let me look at this. We've heard people say that this is a heroic act. To be clear, there is nothing heroic or honorable about what happened in Mesa County. And yeah, we'll see what happens going forward.
I think that's a pretty stark statement in itself, Ernest. And as you said, this is a developing story, so there will be more to come on this. You can check out the latest on coloradopolitics.com. But from there, let's go from Grand Junction back to Denver and bring in Chief Legislative Reporter Marianne Goodland. Marianne, you were on hand earlier this week when Colorado Republicans unveiled something they're calling their commitment to Colorado. What was that all about?
That was a really good way to start your Monday, I have to tell you. This is a list of 10 different pledges that Colorado Republicans, and this was both lawmakers, future candidates, and the chair of the Colorado Republican Party, that they want to make to the voters of Colorado. This is their first stab at the 2022 elections. And topping the list, you have making Colorado affordable, prioritizing public safety, and expanding educational choice.
So, Marianne, I think a lot of the criticism I've seen on that, I want to start there, kind of came around optics. So for one, you talked about making Colorado affordable. They made that point by hosting this event at a gas station to talk about rising gas prices. But that kind of drew some online ribbing for a couple of reasons. One, it was a Sinclair gas station with that iconic dinosaur, which naturally drew some jokes about extinct species in Colorado and where the GOP is heading. Another one, though, was this came as Denver was either topping the list or very high in terms of the worst air quality in the entire world. There were some questions about, do they realize that they're at a gas station talking about this while this is going on? What was your sense of how much optics played into the thinking in this event?
They're very focused on the price of gasoline. And that was a huge talking point for Monday's press conference. They blame President Joe Biden for the fact that gas is now, I think Monday it was $3.69 a gallon at this particular Sinclair station. So they're blaming not only President Joe Biden, they're also blaming the Colorado Democrats for the fact that things have gotten so expensive, whether it's gas, housing, groceries, you name it. So from that perspective, the optics were probably okay, except for the fact that you could probably eat our air on Monday. You could chew it because it was so, it was so thick. So, but the other thing that was kind of interesting, just 2 days later, President Biden sent out an announcement that he wanted to see oil exports from the Middle East increase, and the Republicans have been making hay with that ever since. It's like, well, if this is not such a big deal, these gas prices, all of a sudden Biden wants to do something to reduce the cost of gas. So it's been kind of a weird week for optics.
So, Marianne, a lot of the people I saw in those pictures were state lawmakers. And I'm curious about the timing of this announcement then, in that we're still 4 months away from the next legislative session. Why do you think they wanted to unveil this now? I know you mentioned the campaign. Was there anything else going on here?
They're in a bit, they've got two big issues that they have to deal with between now and next summer. And now is the time that they really have to start focusing on these things. Number one is finding good candidates who can run at up and down the ticket, whether it's for the U.S. Senate, whether it's for the 65 houses in the state house, or 65 seats in the state house, or the 18 seats in the state Senate. Now's the time that they have to be recruiting candidates. So they're putting this out to say, this is our platform. And it's frankly a more moderate platform perhaps than the hard right of the Republican Party, I think, would probably go for. In addition to the three that I mentioned before, they talk about honoring the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, creating jobs, conserving the environment, and bringing accountability and transparency back to government. And when they were asked about this on Monday, Christy Burton Brown, the chair of the state GOP, said that this applies in some parts to this election integrity question that's being raised all over the country by Republicans who feel like the election was stolen.
Thanks, Marianne, for that. And if you'd like to see more on that commitment to Colorado, you can check out the story that Marianne and Ernest both wrote. They were both on hand for that event at Colorado Politics. Until next week, I'm Pat Poblete. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.